Hey, good
Hello.
afternoon, everyone. How's it going? I'm pulling up all our chat links and all that good stuff. Let me send it to Shane so he's got it too. Hey, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm
Afternoon. Good
Nick
morning.
Perro. Good morning. Good whatever time of day it is when you see this, if it's live or if you see it in the post. Hey, I'm Nick Perro. This is Banner and Backbone. I'm joined by my good friend and colleague Shane Urich of the Firebrand Project. Our week has been busy this past week. We did two shows last week.
Yeah.
And this show is sort of going to be a continuation of what we started with Zev Shalev, but with research that Shane, you've been doing. So, how are you, man? Before we get into anything, how are you doing?
I think I try to view everything as a learning opportunity. I try to view all of these things we deal with every day. They're challenging. They're hard. They're things we have to grapple with and justify and you know figure out how we're going to go forward. And that's part of that's part of our this timeline we're in, right? So, like I would be lying if I told everyone that I'm doing chipper, right? Like I'm not. But like I think that we just got to put our heads down and keep going forward. And so this research that I've done into this, and I've had help from other people, like, credit to the people, and I'm not going to say your name out loud in case you don't want that, but you know who you
Mhm.
are, to the people who have contributed as well to the information and the topic that, we're going to talk about today, the particular moment in time that I focused in on. And, I think that, it'll be interesting. But I mean, and I can see now, so that's cool. You didn't know I was nearly as blind as I thought I was. So,
Is that
uh,
helping in any way?
I mean, it's like there's definitely a certain amount of energy you spend trying really hard to look at something.
Yeah.
So I can definitely see, you should see me doing a lot less of this. So, that should be good. But yeah, I mean, how are you, man? It's
I'm good. I had a doctor's appointment this morning. Thank you, VA, for my ability to go to the doctor. And I got vaccinated.
Oh yeah.
So I got up on my vaccines for pneumonia, the flu, COVID, and uh, tetanus. So, hey, I'm covered. Why not get them while they're available? If you
Yeah.
want to get vaccinated, you probably should. If you don't want to get vaccinated, you should probably stay inside and not go near other people.
Yeah, if you have a kid and you don't want to vaccinate your kid, homeschool your kid because they'll get measles. Um,
Yeah.
if you're in a hospital, probably get your kid out of the hospital as quickly as you can because they'll probably get measles.
Or,
Or vaccinate your
or,
kid.
yeah, or just vaccinate your kid because it's child. To me, in my eyes, it's child endangerment to
I agree.
not vaccinate yourself or your children, um, and possibly risk their death. Uh, i.e., the parents in what is it, North Carolina, who have the child with measles that they're not going to get vaccinated, even though they're dying. Um, there's like some 7-year-old, I think, in North Carolina. That's it's it's horrendous. Um,
I mean, people are sick,
yes.
man. They're sick. They don't get it. They just are brainwashed, right? Like, I recently I keep thinking to myself, Facebook was a psyop, dude. Like, it really was. Like what did we do to ourselves by allowing just wholesale accepting social media? Like, it's a drug. It's a drug for humanity. Um,
The good thing about that at the moment is there are two lawsuits going on
yeah.
around
How's that New
that.
Mexico one going? Have you been
I
following
haven't
up?
seen any updates. I will take a look while we're talking today because I
Okay.
do want to make sure we continue updating on that on a week, at
Mhm.
least on a weekly basis, because it's a trial. It could go for a while. But there's two going on. There's one in California and one in New Mexico, and they're slightly different. Um, and so I'll have to research into the one in California before I speak on it. But I did see that there was some testimony that happened around that one. Um, and Zuckerberg was deposed for it. And it just, he's a fucking asshole, in my opinion. I think he's an asshole. Um, and also, Chris, thank you for putting it in the chat too. Is there is a VA policy change that is
Oh
currently
God.
requiring or is under the open public comment period. This VA policy change is around evaluating ratings based on the impact of your medication working and or not working. And so if your medication is working and you feel better because you are properly medicated, they will rate you lower. So they are downplaying our medication. They're downplaying our mental health and the impacts that it has. They are trying to make it so that if you feel better, then you get less of the benefits that you had already received just because you're feeling better. So they're disincentivizing medication for mental health patients specifically. And that's specifically it, is
Yeah.
around mental health. Um, and it's awful. I will make sure we drop the link specifically that goes to the comment section for it, where you can just leave your public comment on it, because I think it's really important. I am a disabled veteran. I rely on the VA and the medical care that I can receive there. And if they're going to consider re rating people at a lower rating just because their medication works, veterans are going to die. No, there's no way around that. Veterans are going to commit suicide. Veterans are there because they're not going, because veterans are less expensive dead than they are alive. And this is a monetary decision by the VA Secretary Doug Collins to try and cut this and use this policy to cut spending by re-rating veterans less than they should be getting. Um, and I think that's fucking horseshit.
I mean, they kill people every day, right? I mean,
Yes,
this is
it's on par. So I'm going to drop the link in the
I don't
chat
want to
for this.
minimize like what you're saying. I don't want that, but
Oh,
like,
no, 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 no. I
but like,
totally understand. People are dying every day. And this is just another thing that they keep adding on to the list that they're going to try and get away with and let it happen, because first they came for the disabled people. And
well, this is how
guess
they come
who?
to disabled
Guess
people.
guess who?
They
Most of the disabled, a lot of the disabled population in the states are veterans.
It's a
So
disproportionate amount of homeless people, right? Like, are
mm,
veterans, right? Like, these are like, I had a great live stream with Lisa from We Are the Third Estate
yeah, I saw
yesterday.
that. How'd it go?
Um, it was great. I mean, I had this kind of conversation with her, and I went into it, and I'm not going to go down the whole thing, but
Yeah, yeah,
basically,
yeah.
I was trying to communicate. I'm like, look, like we need to stop. We need to look at the things the way they are and understand like entropy and momentum and how that like the universe is governed by systems, right? Like we do space talk here, right? Like the universe is governed by systems. There's laws, right? And we know that you can equate those laws. And in short, I basically said, look, we know the universe is governed by laws. We don't have a ton of laws. We have a lot of theories, we have hypotheses, but laws are not necessarily something in abundance, because a law is something that happens just about every time, which is it has to be observably true. So
Mm-hmm.
the idea basically was like, we need to look at momentum. And I've been trying to tell people how important it is. We need to talk about the earth, the climate, because the law says that entropy affects everything in the universe. Human actions are causing change, entropy, and everything is about momentum, right? And we know, because the data tells us that we've passed 7 of the 9 tipping points, at which point Earth loses habitability. Like, this isn't a conversation anymore, and it can't just be a conversation anymore about what's the best environmental policy. The conversation is, do we let billionaires and oil and gas companies drive humanity and every species on the planet to extinction? I don't really know how to make that more clear, like, other than to equate, like, the law of the universe says that this is what will happen. That is the law. That is not a law in a figurative sense, right? Or like, oh, the law says they can't shoot people from ICE, can't shoot people in the head. Right? That's not a law. That's a social contract, right? Whereas the law of the universe says that we are causing a compounding system that consistently accelerates itself. And all of our climate models are poor because they lack imagination. They don't account for things like water, right? They're accounting for carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, but water is better at trapping heat. It's better at sitting in the atmosphere, right? We know Venus is what? We know what is Venus, right? It's a big ball of gas. Why? Because of the greenhouse effect, right? We can do that here. In fact, we're doing it here. We have 2 critical systems left that we haven't crossed: the biosphere, which is basically all the oxygen, and the AMOC, I believe, is still it. But my only point here is, like, we need to be looking at things like we don't have all the time in the world, because we don't have all the time in the world. And then
Yes.
so, like, urgency, decisiveness. The conversation can't just be about the Epstein files. It needs to be about, hey, congressperson, how are you going to get them to stop pushing the earth towards extinction? The United States enabled this. We are the home of these oil and gas tycoons. We produce more natural gas than anyone else in the world. Our money, all of these billionaires' money, it comes from this, and that wealth, actually, with the Rothschilds and everything, turns out to be part of the Epstein network. Turns out to be part of this whole thing, part of this greed, systemic greed, and this addiction to power mandates that these people keep going, even if it means extinction. And the other part of this conversation has to be what's already happening in the Middle East, in Africa. Famines, droughts, real happening.
Yeah.
It can't, if anything, we need to tie the Epstein files into these things. Everything can't be in isolation. And we need to be decisive, right? If we want to say prosecute the Epstein files, we can't expect Pam Bondi to prosecute the pedophiles, because she's a pedophile herself, or an enabler at best. We need a step in between, right? You can't just go from, hey, pedophiles, prosecute yourselves. We need to have a step in between. We can't keep demanding, because almost like it's like this consumeristic thing where we're waiting for something we can consume to fix the problem, instead of actually taking decisive action to solve the problem. We need decisiveness, and the time for floundering and just discussion and debate is we're running out of it. And that's, again, that's the law. That's a fact. I'm not, I told people, I'm not here to scare you. You should just be scared. Right? I'm not here fear mongering. I'm telling you that this is more important than Epstein because there's no planet for Epstein's entire thing to exist on. I mean, how tragic would it be if we really fulfilled the great filter? That theory that all, advanced civilizations, they actually wipe themselves out. And it wasn't through nuclear war. It wasn't through any of these things. It was through, a 1% of 1% of 1% of 1% of 1% of 1% of the population of a planet. And I'm sure that goes on exponentially, right? Because we're talking about billions of people. 14 people have more wealth than the bottom 50%, right? Thanks to Epstein and his network and the things that they built, these billionaires for global power, they have more wealth than the bottom 50% of the population. I mean, 14 people. Are we really, I have to ask, are we really going to let 14 people destroy the planet? Is that where we're at? Like, are we, is your oil and gas revenue year over year more important than a planet? Like, these guys think they're going to go somewhere. They're not going to go anywhere. Like, they're delusional, right? So they don't see reality. They can't interpret it the way you and me are going to interpret it. They're going to keep doing what they're doing because they've committed and they're like sick, right? Like, Epstein's network persists to this day because they're sick and that's what they do.
I think I think we're limiting ourselves by saying Epstein's network, because this is clearly not Epstein's network. This is Putin's network. This is
Israel.
This is the KGB network. I'll start with it where the head of the snake actually is, which is KGB Russia, because they created a plan to infiltrate Israel as well. Like they said,
that tracks.
They said the U.S. owns Israel. Well, we're going to take over Israel and then own the U.S. through that as well. So the Chabadis, the Russian sect of Judaism, the very ultra conservative version that we see in a lot of ways in this like Zionistic hate mongering, that's part of Russian mafia. So let's hit the snake right on the head. Like the Russia, and I like the theory that came out around this. I don't like it, but I understand it, and I see the validity in the theory that came around. Fuck. And then I just brain farted. I'm so sorry, y'all.
It's the vaccines. The vaccines.
No. Or it could be I didn't take my medications this morning.
And you can always go do that. It takes 2 seconds to pop some pills. We'll be here.
No, taking it at weird times doesn't do good things. So I'd rather miss the dose for the morning and then just take it later. And that's fine. I'll live. But all of this, okay, so where I was going, sorry about that, y'all. Where I was going with this was in the, the 80s, the late 80s, early 90s, when the USSR fell. Or the Russian Empire dispersed from the USSR into what we now know as modern day Russia. They told us at that point that, oh, by the way, we're going to infiltrate the US and take it down without a single shot being fired. They told us that. We were too arrogant to believe it. The next step was that they did it to Israel too. And they used the same Russian mafia through the networks that they could, which just happened to be Jewish networks because they pushed them out of the country and into different areas. And the theory on it was that really wasn't collapsed, that the USSR never actually collapsed. It just dissolved so that we would be disarmed from it, so that we would no longer consider it a threat, so that they could more covertly subvert us. And so at this point, with the amount of like Russian influence in every fucking thing that is going on in the US, like, did you know the accelerationist movement is a Russian neo-Nazi started idea?
No, but I mean, you don't need to convince me, right?
Oh,
Like,
you should read Christopher Matthias's book To
to
Catch
catch
a
a fast.
Fascist. This
Okay.
is also what we're reading for the Anti-Fascist Book Club right now. I will
Okay.
link it for others. I like, yo, I didn't know until last week that the accelerationist movement, which is Nick Fuentes's movement, and what he advocates for, it's the what's considered black pilling. It's a nihilism movement towards, since everything's going to end, we may as well hasten it to the end. Is part of the philosophy on that. It was started by a Russian neo-Nazi, and it got popularity not as a like ideology for the like the organization itself, but as an ideology for plenty of its members, Patriot Front, which was at one point Vanguard America, which, oh, by the way, were the folks that did the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, that with uh, very fine people on both sides. And Nick Fuentes is out here advocating that women are good for only three things, which is being a mother, a whore, or a nun. So let's just frame who Nick Fuentes is and where that came from. That spawned from a Russian neo Nazi.
I mean, like, it's just one of those things. I mean, how can you? It's so convenient that terms like conspiracy theory exist. It's so convenient that people choose to believe that America is something that it's not. It's so convenient that people choose to think that because someone who has more money than who's part of a list of people that has more money than 50% of the planet, that they get to join that club, that says that they can be that they think they're going to do that. It's just ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. It's illogical. But you have to understand, like, what you're telling us, right, very clearly here, is that these things are designed to be illogical. They're designed to create instability. They're designed um, to capture foreign governments by creating dissent in population. And then Russia just backs the side that is going to better suit their needs. Here's
No.
where I think this gets interesting.
Let,
Go ahead.
Russia doesn't back the side that suits their needs. Russia backs all sides. Russia backs both sides because Russia acts as a chaos agent in the world. The KGB itself, like separating the Russian government from the Russian people, from like Russian people, just like we would want in America, because there are still plenty of Russian people who are not fascists or not authoritarian assholes. They're just indoctrinated and beat the fuck down. But separating Russia out, as in the KGB and like the Kremlin, they play both sides. They, in fact, fund a lot of the ultra left and ultra right wing um, ends of the American political spectrum, because Jill Stein is just as guilty as other Russian assets on the right wing side, even though she's considered left wing. She steals votes from Democratic candidates otherwise, be it part of the Democratic Party or pro democracy candidates in general. She steals votes from them. She is a Russian backed entity. The accelerationist movement isn't a political movement, it's a cultural movement. They just didn't care which political side picked it up. They just wanted the accelerationism to pick up. And so I want to make sure when we frame things like that on, and Clearroot, thanks for dropping that in the chat too, on where you can pick up To Catch Fascist direct from the publisher rather than going through one of the book companies. I want to bring this name up because this is the individual who started the accelerationist discussions, and I want to see if this rings a bell for you. And if it doesn't, we may start. I may start looking into him to see, like, is he actually involved, or is this individual or the pseudonym actually involved in the Epstein files somewhere? Because that may also just be super important, because it always is, because what it really is a network of spies. Alexander Slavros.
Slavros, like
Yeah,
SLAV.
Slavros.
Slavros. Is it
Or
Alexander or
Slavros.
Alexander? Like
It's
O?
spelt as Alexander with an A. So it's
Alexander
a pseudonym. It's not their actual real name. I don't believe. At least the first name isn't, because
with an
I
X. Alexander.
yeah, it's an American English spelling of Alexander.
Okay, Slavrov. Interesting. I haven't heard of him, but it's like if it is a pseudonym, right? It could be anyone. I mean, like the thing about the Epstein files or anything that, and like I'll be the first to say, I haven't looked like at a huge set, right? I went through and I looked for very specific things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's very clear that the Epstein files are full of pseudonyms and basically things that are analogies for other things, right? When you invite someone for lunch, when they're picking up snacks, it's never about snacks. It's never about food. It's about providing children for these people, right? Like they literally, I swear they would sit around, and I remember when the first QAnon thing came out, and it's like, if these files really tell us anything, is that the only function of QAnon was to do basically share everything that's going on and only leave the Democrats in there as a function to drive people, to attack Hillary and the Democratic Party, as well as to make people assume the Epstein files aren't about Republicans at all, right? Like you give people a bone so they think that they know everything, right? When the insider scoop, they wanted it to stop at Democrats. Like that was the plan. They were going to use it on the Clintons. But the reality is that sure, the Clintons were part of it. And the Clintons, they've now testified as well. They talked to Les Wexner yesterday. I mean, like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why are these guys even talking? Like, there's ample evidence that these guys did it, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're staring at the files. It feels like a joke to me, in a sense. Like, I know it's important. I know that, like, I think
Yeah,
from a
I'm not
citizen
going to say
perspective,
the Yeah, I'm
um,
not going to say those two things. I think this is just the start of what needs to continue. I think the important ones, I think Les Wexner would have been much more important 10 years ago, 12 years ago. I think others are more important though. I think we have enough important people who are younger, who are involved, that we can actively talk about and pursue, who came into the network after knowing Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile and a child rapist and a child sex trafficker and a child abuser and an alleged child murderer, and money launderer and all sorts of other things. They came in afterwards. Folks like Peter Thiel, folks like
Peter Thiel,
Elon Musk,
very interesting how,
folks like Mark Zuckerberg. Those three names are really important, and
yeah.
they all came in after the fact, and that's a huge red flag. Like if you want to wave a red flag on, like, whoa, this person is not safe to be around, it's they became friends with Jeffrey Epstein after the fact of him being known as a pedophile. And
So
these three men did. And it looked like from our last discussion too, and let's use this as a jumping off point, I guess, into the research that you've been doing around this, and other names and other important figures other than just Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, is Peter Thiel also groomed and owns the vice president in many ways. So let's
he
not
does
forget that fact.
100%.
We need to just like throw that one, soft lob that one out there, softball, underhand, like lob pitch, like soft pitch softball, not real softball where they'll fucking smash your face in with it. But like let's soft pitch this one in so that people are easy to remember. Here is JD Vance is owned by Peter Thiel. He was groomed by him. Why do you think he code switches so well? Because he was taught to do it, and then Peter Thiel, who is willingly becomes a part of the Epstein network because it allowed access to Russia. And let's maybe use that as a jumping off point, because as much as I hate continuing to talk about Russia all the time, like they seem to be where the evil comes, or like the obnoxious behavior and the worst behaviors are coming from. And that seems to be their export to the world too.
Yeah, like I say, America's export is corporate fascism, right? Which
Mhm.
apparently was curated and designed by Russia and Israel, right? Like, like enabled, right? Like, I don't think it was I think it was created here, but I think it was weaponized by those who saw the opportunities in exacerbating a system like the one we have here, to the point where free markets can become anything but, and you can use that. So I agree. I think what what I've been looking into, in particular, is one meeting, just one meeting, and I found this meeting not actually because of I was looking for the meeting, but I was looking for Tom Barrack. Tom Barrack, for those of you who don't know, he's a close associate of he's a very close associate of Epstein, a close associate of e, e, what's it, Eamon Barak, the other guy, the former Prime Minister
Ehud Barak.
Ehud Barak,
Yeah.
worked very closely with him on collaborating on actually early tech surveillance and military avionics systems in the back in 2016, funding a lot of these Israeli tech companies that have grown and coordinated with Thiel and Palantir and all these people today. Tom Barrack is right now, he's the acting ambassador to Syria, a lot of the Middle East. He's been doing real estate and things like that since a long time, right?
Mhm.
He's with Trump back to the 80s, founder of Colony Capital and all of his things. But I was looking for Tom Barrack because I think this guy, I see him all the time right now, right? So I'm more interested not in who's dead or not who's in the past, but who I see doing things right now, like Jared Kushner, right? Like, and I also know that the through lines to Jared Kushner through Tom Barrack. So there's a lot of different things, even if just by following one situation from him, knowing how intimately the system that they've designed, right? Um, it's governed right by how they do things, right? They have a system, right? They are going to do things the way that works for them. So one of the things that works really well, I think, with the Epstein files, at least from my perspective and my experience, is going back, and actually retroactively starting from where you are and tracking backwards to the point you can point to and verify in the file. So as opposed to trying to go forwards from where the file is, you start with something you know is happening, and you use that, and you use what you know about them now to help guide you in the files, because these people haven't changed. Why would they change? Everything has worked for them so far. Why? What motivation do they have to change? They still operate the same way they did when Epstein was alive. That's the same exact thing. So I'm looking for Tom Barrack, and
Yeah.
the first thing that pops up is a message, and so I'm going to tell you guys the story. So on August 29th, 2016, 72 days before Americans went to the polls to elect Trump, uh, Jeffrey Epstein hosted what he calls an interesting lunch in New York City. Around the table, according to his own emails, and that I have verified through cross-examining multiple different threads over email, messages, iMessages, Signal, things like that, sat four power centers: the former Prime Minister of Israel, a Russian ambassador to the United Nations, a billionaire fixer at the heart of Donald Trump's rise, and unnamed Saudi representatives. This is interesting. Um, the Saudis are only listed as the Saudis. We don't know who the Saudis are, but Epstein does reference the Saudis. Interesting meeting with the Saudis, Barrick, Barack, and Churkin, right? So within 48 hours of that lunch, Epstein's office moved to turn his newly purchased Caribbean island into high-end development with help personally referred by Tom Barrick, right? So Tom Barrick sends a contact card to Jeffrey Epstein of the owner of this company that they did choose, that ultimately we're able to verify as well that they're having I'm confused. Okay. Okay. That's what I get for looking at the chat. So basically they're working on turning so basically within like 48 hours, if you can hear me, am I still here?
You're back now.
Okay, for sure. So what we're gonna walk through right now is the meeting. We're gonna talk. I'm gonna share with you everything I know about that meeting, what I've learned, the context surrounding it, and what influences and through lines that we can draw based on that research. So let's start with the email itself. So on the morning of August 29th, 2016 at 6:44 a.m., Epstein emails the former Treasury Secretary, Larry Summers. He says, "Are you in New York today? Interesting lunch." Okay. So Summers replies that he's not in town. And a few hours later, Epstein sends the key line, which is the guest list: Saudis, Ehud, Tom Barrick, and Churkin. Saudis. We don't know who the Saudis are. However, it's worth noting that in the first email, which is on the 28th or the 27th, maybe, you see Epstein message Tom Barrick. And Barrick messages Epstein, and he says, "I met your Saudi friend, and he really likes you," or something along those lines. Could be MBS. It would make sense. But it could be a lot of people, right? Saudis are all, it doesn't, because the thing we have to understand is that the Saudis are, and the Emiratis and the Qataris, right? They all are tycoons in global real estate, right? The way you launder money is several ways, but the best ways are real estate. Is definitely one of the best ways. Is real estate, right? So if they're moving their money around, it makes a lot of sense. They had all this, oil money. They put it in they put it into this whole thing. So it really makes sense that you would have them present, particularly because Barrick is involved. Tom Barrick is all about the Middle East. That's what he's been doing. He's been moving money around there, and as well as horses and fine art as well. This is true. These are great ways to launder money because the value is attributable, right? You can decide the value based on an arbitrary thing, not necessarily, a direct value. Well, this house is worth more because of X, Y, and Z. You just overvalue it, right? It's really not difficult. So this is the type of network he has. But what's so interesting is that you have the leader of Israel, you have former leader of Israel, who's intimately, connected probably with Russia, particularly the network, the Israeli intelligence network, that apparatus. You have Tom Barrick, who had just finished sealing the largest real estate consolidation deal of 2016, actually, prior to this, coming back from the Middle East after spending a day in Turkey. On the 28th, he confirms that he'll be back for the lunch. And so the 29th, the lunch takes place. So in New York, you have Saudis, Vitaly Churkin, who is the Russian ambassador to the UN, Tom Barrick, who was going to be the chair of actually Trump's inaugural committee, right? Tom Barrick in 2016 was much more centralized in the Trump power structure than he is now. Right now, I actually think the most powerful roles in the United States government are these special envoys, because they kind of just act with their own discretion in grifting their own region of the world. Like, why does Witkoff and Kushner visit
This is what
all
is
the
the
time?
result of taking apart the State Department,
Correct.
and
Correct.
Marco Rubio is just uh, their like head of the State Department for no reason. Like
Yeah,
it's just for show.
it's a
Like a
show.
lot of the stuff that goes on the on the on the Trump party line is just for show. It's all for set is what Trump is about. Trump does set things in the front so that it's easy to do these backroom deals in the back. And without a State Department in place that functions properly, we don't have a proper diplomatic corps. And that without a proper diplomatic corps, we cannot produce real foreign policy. We produce the whims of individuals, which is what Shane is talking about here, which is the authoritarianism side, which is where authoritarianism is it's when it becomes whims of the individual and not whims of the department and the institution based on Congress's word, because Congress actually is the first branch of government, not the president.
Correct. Yeah.
Anyway, but going into all of this is, yeah, one of the things that we've talked about is like one of the reasons too why we brought Zev Shalev on last week was, and we're going to try and get him back again. He's got other work he's digging hard into right now. Is he's been talking about this for 10 years. He's been writing about this, and he's been detailing and chronicling a lot of this and where all of it started, which is the Iran-Contra deal, which included the Saudis and Jamal Khashoggi and the that whole early not Jamal, Adnan Khashoggi.
Khashoggi was the guy who got mutilated by MBS.
Was he?
Yeah. So in 2018.
Who was the early arms dealer?
Oh gosh.
It all goes back to Iran.
I don't remember. There's so many.
It goes back to the Iran-Contra deal, which was
Robert Maxwell.
The British have a lot to do with this too. Like the British are a problem in this too.
Oh yeah, like Boris. No, who is the former Tony Blair? Okay, Tony Blair, former Prime Minister of the UK, is deeply ingrained in the Gaza Great Trust plan. Him, Kushner, Wickoff, and it's the other thing. I mean, what really, and I mean, just because I know the people there, right, at this meeting, right? So if the Saudis were there, if the only
it was
person,
Adnan Khashoggi.
Yeah. I'm just talking about this meeting on the 29th in 2016, right? Like, yeah, Khashoggi was the journalist. And so they're there, right? This is 2016. They're having a meeting with Epstein. We have, to a certain point, there's speculation. Who's the most likely Saudi person? My guess, the solution to figuring out or confirming this would be to go through, actually see communications between Bannon and Epstein. And I would try and see if you can link, because it was Bannon who introduced MBS to Kushner and all of them. So I would say that the best through line, and this is just me saying how I would investigate it, right? Like there's lots of people who are out there looking in the files. So this is a good additional line of thought. But from what you learn about this meeting, which I'll go through here, consider Bannon, consider figuring out who these Saudis are is really important because it's this last piece of a puzzle. And I wouldn't even be surprised if the contents of this meeting were early discussions about how the Great Trust and Gaza Riviera was going to occur. and what this genocide in Gaza, I think this is something that's been planned for decades. Actually, I think just tracing
It's
the
yeah.
relationships and the donations of Kushner and their family, and the way that you have the UN and in Israel, and it all just goes through, and there's some convergence uh, at Gaza with all of these characters. They all converge in Israel. Uh, when a lot of these people were friendly, and understand that in geopolitics dynamics change, and they're changing right now, but at the time, um, they were all very friendly. They were all making money hand over fist together, by manipulating the geopolitical world, using money and
Mhm.
power, right? Like,
Yes.
so you know uh I'll try and give you guys some specifics here, because this whole thing is just very interesting, and there's so many different ways you could look at it. Like Courtney says here in the chat, it's kind of, well, which way is it going? And so, here's the sequence of correspondence. On 8/28, Barrick messages your Saudi friend, with your Saudi friend in Turkey. And then he says, I'm not available until Monday. Epstein asks if he's in New York. He says, no, I'm in Turkey. I'll be back Monday. And so the lunch is then confirmed on the 29th to have the Saudis, Barrick, and Churkin in attendance. And then it's important to note that in the very beginning here, Larry Summers was invited. So they wanted Larry Summers there, who was going to be, I believe, what did we say he was? The Department, or the Secretary of Treasury, or something. I just like missed that, right? Larry Summers. Yeah. And so Summers was the Secretary
Of the Treasury.
of the
Was the
Treasury,
Secretary
the
of the
U.S.
Treasury. Yeah.
Treasury, right? Like, he has in-depth knowledge of the U.S. Treasury. So you have the Saudis, you have the guy for the Middle East, effectively the Trump fixer for the Middle East. You have Vitaly Churkin, who is the Russian ambassador to the UN, and the former prime minister of Israel, all sitting in a room in New York. Churkin dies, less than a year later. And there's so much. This is such a complex room. I mean, think about the different crossover of all of the different people from different places of power in that room, right? It's like,
Mhm.
what could they be talking about between their puffs of their cigars and the 6-year-olds they're passing around? Like, what are they talking about? So the interesting thing I mentioned was this contact card from Tom Barrick to Epstein. And so it gives this Hart Horton company. It's the owner of Hart Horton, which is an architecture firm that was based in San Francisco at the time. And we can verify that after this meeting, the Epstein's assistant reaches out to this Hart Howerton multiple times, right? So you see, it's not Larry Summers, his assistant, right? Who his name is escaping me, but he reaches out and he says, hey, let's get a meeting. We want to meet about Great St. James, which is Epstein's second island, that he actually had to use a shadow company to buy this island because the people didn't want to sell to Epstein because he was a pedophile. And he had to go through the Virgin Islands and a shadow company to buy it. And there's actually a lawsuit that continues onwards after basically them saying well, we didn't want to sell to Epstein. You tricked us, right? He straight up basically said, we don't want to sell to you. And he used his means and methods to basically get this island regardless. And so then he goes and seeks all these contracts. You see a Hart Howerton deal play out over the next couple of weeks. You see that you see Hart Howerton emailing Jim Tinson, the CEO, has a Skype call with Epstein just a couple days after that meeting. And then there is correspondence going back and forth about basically, when are we going to get this contract? When are we get this contract? Ultimately, we do know that Epstein fired Hart Howerton before they were actually going to do any work. So, the pattern that's interesting here is you see the you see this like part of Epstein that is just like he's so impatient, right? He's so entitled. Like, you have every single day, right? You just, hey, what's going on? When am I getting this contract? Or you read his messages to other people, right? And he's like, everyone it should be licking his boots as far as he's concerned. Um, and so he's, this island is really important. I mean, he's going around, and this is 2016, right? He's dead in 3 years. He's
Yeah.
dead in 3 years. So at the time, he's scrambling around to build effectively the upgraded Little St. James, right? The ramped up pedophile, whatever. Like, what are they talking about at that meeting? Like, hey, I want to build this island, guys. Like, like, what were they discussing? Like, what do I need to put on my island? Like, what kind of tech can you give me from Israel to shield my island? Like, what kind of like things do we need to do to make it a safe place? Like, anything could be the discussion there. But it goes to show that this discussion around Great St. James, it starts in 2016, right? So early 2016 is when he purchases the island itself. And there's a letter to the New York Justice, correctional or something, basically saying, hey, Epstein bought this island, but he's not going to live there. But since he's a registered sex offender, we're just notifying you that he's going to go to that island sometimes, but he doesn't sleep there, right? Which just goes to show like how Epstein had no consequences for what he did, right? Like, he's able to like buy an island, and then he just alerts the government that, yeah, I know I'm a sex offender and I need to be registered, but sure, I have this island, right? So, and this all happens it's kind of like he bought all this, he did this all in the Trump environment, right? And I have to ask myself, like, why the urgency, right? Like, why are you so worried about getting this top secret island up and running? And Barrick has an interesting role here, because not only is he the connector to the architecture firm, right? This is basically a black box island, is what I think they're trying to design, right? At the same time, they're using this relationship, because a lot of these architecture firms and places, a lot of that money goes back to the Saudis, who build, these ridiculous mega projects, right? Like, just look at Vision 2030 and MBS. They just love to build massive, extravagant shit. Like, it just is cultural. Like, they've historically in the region, they built giant palaces. It just is like, so a lot of them have companies, and they also use the real estate to launder money. It's really easy to launder money because you over purchase materials, or you right? So it's like, it's exactly what they do. It makes sense. Now, there's something that is noted, is there's no written agenda. There's no minutes. You can't find anything, at least as of yet, about what actually happened in the meeting. There's not like a correspondence about following up. I mean, it's like, I had a good meeting with them, right? Okay, so what's the meeting? Like, what? We don't really know. So the only thing we can do is try and understand, the context of what they did after, right? Like, I think that's the best thing you can do, is if you don't know necessarily, what the actual context of the meeting was, you have to put it together with surrounding context. And you can do that, right? You got the who, what, when, where, why, right? If you have a third of those, you can put together the other four. Because, never underestimate the power of context.
Well,
context,
and with the actions of the things that happened during that time, we can see some of the outcomes. Was like Tom Barrack was a speaker at the RNC in 2016.
yeah, he was.
and he was the conduit. Like you said, he was a conduit, but he was specifically a conduit between Epstein and the Trump administration and the Trump candidacy. And it gave Epstein a backdoor entry into Donald Trump's circle without having to explicitly still be friends with Donald Trump. It allowed him to maintain his influence, or some of his influence, without directly connecting himself. And so that, like, that's an important opening there for Epstein, which obviously the Epstein network itself, like we've talked about, is not just Epstein. It is the Saudis, it is the Israeli government, it is the Russian government, it's a lot of folks in the US, not just the government, but a lot of folks in the US. And so, like, Epstein's network that he was building, these systems that he was putting into place, was he was building new institutions. He was building these underground institutions, or these back market institutions, that would allow them to circumvent our current system and help take it down. And so it makes it easier for folks to already be connected in those systems to who they are going to be their receiving partners are on all of this. So just like you focus on certain people nowadays, is Jared Kushner is the result of those systems. Steve Witkoff is the result of those systems. These systems started in a lot of ways during the Iran-Contra deal with the US and Reagan. It is, a lot of this leads back to Reagan and the Iran-Contra deal. And it is older. It is still older than that. Like, this was brought to the US to undermine the US system. This was
Like the
not a US
Rothschild.
operation at first, is what we can see, like, clearly with our eyes, is that this was not a US first operation. This just became a US is now part of it operation.
The
And they're
U.S.
going to
was
be a
the
big
best
part of it.
base of operations. But
Yes.
where else would you want to be, right? These people were not American; they were wealthy.
Yeah.
Understand, this is just the wealthy people, right? The wealthy people in America, who they were the slave owners. Why? Because they didn't pay for labor. So they had a higher percentage of wealth strictly based on the fact that their system did not mandate they pay. So they made more money, right? Like, it's that simple. So they had more power. And then it was the oil and gas. And who had the money to go into oil and gas? Because they didn't pay for labor, right? Cause and effect, right? Who's going to have the opportunity? Who has liquid at the time? Who's got the liquid? Who's got the liquid to say, "Oh, we just found oil and gas in Texas. I'm putting a pump there." Right? The farmer who found it, he's not the one who pumped it out of the ground. It was the person who came and bought him out for an amount of money he'd never seen, or they'd never seen before. And that's the model, right? You have enough that if you give someone a scrap, they'll think they're rich. The Rothschilds, I think, are mentioned. I was reading like 12,000 times. There's even a reference in what I've been looking at to the Rothschild. Like the Rothschilds could very well be the or the like the heart of the wealthy system that was co-opted, certainly by the KGB or Israel and Mossad, or whatever you want. Like, again, there's a lot of kind of up or down, but like I said too, right? Like, after this meeting, the card for Hart Howerton is sent by Tom Barrack after the meeting, which means they did discuss. We know this is one of the only things we really can say with any certainty. But for him to just send the card without like context, like, I am going to have the courage to allege here and say that they talked about this during the meeting, and that Barrack then provided a relationship, an opportunity, and Rothschild Aviation. Yep, a lot of aviation like deals with Barrack too, right? And you see this, right? This is the 30th. And then Leslie Groff, he reaches out to Hart Howerton on August 30th to the 31st. Leslie Groff handles like all of his correspondence for this, right? And Leslie Groff even manages like other lower level fixers, right? Like it's there's De La Cortez, or I think, yeah, De La Cortez, or one of the people here as well who works for Epstein is told by Leslie Groff in an email as well that, hey, you need to go change the apartment codes. And he's also getting refrigeration training, whatever that means. So, probably this De La Cortez guy, is Cortez or Valesca. I'm forgetting, but this guy, he's the guy who goes to the apartments. He's the guy who handles the dirty stuff, the refrigeration, whatever the hell that means. Like child jerky or like the jerky, right? Like these are the things in the files, right? Jerky, like what jerky? Like they're picking up jerky, like, oh, I'm bringing jerky. What jerky? Like, and then they have a picture in there of a fucking bag with a piece of jerky in it. So, like this is picking up snacks, right? And this is probably who they send, right? Like they want sushi and something else. And so part of that correspondence is go and pick up, this lunch. I think what's very interesting in particular as well is when you get this response from Jim Tinson, who was the CEO of Hart Howerton at the time. And he basically says after the Skype meeting, he says, it was basically great to discuss how our interdisciplinary team could help set the vision for Great St. James Island. Wow. Okay. And like these guys build things for like the Saudis, these other people, right? So the question becomes for me, are these companies ones that are catered towards building, trafficking, black box, wealthy places? Like, what do these architecture firms really do? Like, are they architecture firms? How many of these architecture firms are actually catered towards designing sex trafficking operations? Like, this to me reads that Epstein was also firing these guys. There was multiple companies that he hired and fired over the course of the next several years to work on Great St. James. Yeah, Erica Kirk attached to the Rothschilds. It all goes to the Rothschilds because we have to understand it all starts with money. None of this changes. None of this whole system is built on money. It's the money that gets you in. It's the pedophilia and the child rape that traps you. Because once you rape a kid, they've got you for life. You do whatever they tell you to. Like, look at the relationship you see between this guy, Tersh, who was the ambassador actually to he was the president of, the board of the Peace Institute, International Peace Institute. And he is in all of these conversations with Epstein. Can I go to this apartment? Can I do this? And he's like manic, right? He talks to Epstein like, you're the best friend I've ever had. Like, you've been so good to me this year. Can I go to your Paris apartment? I'm here. Can I go to this apartment? What girl, like, who am I going to be there? And there's even at one point in this dialogue where Epstein presents a name and then he says, actually this name instead. And he's like, oh, that's great. Right. So like, I think from what I can deduce at least as well, the methodology in terms of how these people were presented is very simple. Each girl had an apartment and that apartment had a code. The individual who was going to rape the girl or the boy, who was, put in their given apartment, which kind of makes sense, right? Because if you want someone to stay, you take someone who's homeless and you give them a home, and then you say, oh, well, at least I have a home. Yes, I get sexually assaulted by rich, powerful men, but they're being groomed and abused and all these things. Like, they stay because they were homeless and Epstein takes them off of the street. The model makes perfect sense. And then you see them going around changing codes. right? Like there's people whose job is to go to each of these apartments, right? And change codes, refrigeration, like there's an operation here on the street level, understanding how these things work. Like it's not just about, right, like finding how are they doing it? And then from that, you like, okay, well, I know that if they're going to this apartment, where are the other apartments? Like, look, so in that sense, I just think that even from this one little meeting, there's so much to look at. And I think the most important thing, if you take anything away from this, is I want to know what they talked about in this meeting. I think that the timing of the meeting prior to Trump's election, like the Larry Summers being invited but not actually attending, I think is even significant, right? Because, and it's a dark comment, but it's true. Waste management is half of their business, right? Like, how do you empty and clean the apartment? Is changing the codes on an apartment, what does that really mean? That could very easily mean get rid of the body, right? Like, I don't think so in that case, because they'll send new codes. But like, Epstein had apartments all over the world. You see people asking to use the apartment. We know what Epstein did. Okay, so it's the two questions I really have here. Who are the Saudis? I think MBS is my best guess. I think it's MBS. I think that would make the most sense. I think that MBS and his relationship that evolved with Kushner, which was facilitated through Bannon, which is why I think you need to find the through line from Epstein to Bannon on these emails. And again, it's like thinking about the timeline too, right? That's our biggest weapon. Is in this case, and my belief is that you have a timeline, so you can look for correspondence between Bannon and Epstein in that time bracket. We also know when they first started meeting. We know that it was essential that Kushner brought MBS into power, that he stole documents, confidential documents from the desk of the sitting president, that was the highest security confidence, provided those to MBS, and which he used to execute a purge that put him in power, that put him into power, and to create the authority where he can unilaterally, I don't know, give Jared Kushner $2 billion for his, money funneling company, Affinity Partners, right? Which operates precisely to the means of laundering and facilitating foreign money, usually Saudi, Emirati, Qatari money into the United States. Best example I can give you, look at the most recent purchase of EA Games. EA, they are one of the biggest. You like Madden? You ever played FIFA? Have you ever played The Sims? Have you done? They own millions and millions and millions of people's and Americans' consumer data. Thanks to Affinity Partners and Jared Kushner, they facilitated a buyout by the Saudi PIF, their sovereign wealth fund, through Affinity Partners for a 93% stake in EA, meaning that they effectively run the company. These are the tools that Epstein wanted to build. These are the tools that are functioning now. This meeting, the timing, it just seems to me like this is all right before you have these 4 years of Kushner trying to get, and Charles and Jared trying to get them to buy out 666 Fifth Avenue. You have all of these different relationships, and the Saudis in particular have had a vision for the Middle East for a long time, particularly MBS. He has what he wants the region to look like. Vision 2030. And, these people, they didn't, like, Epstein's using America, right? Like, Churkin's using America. Barack, right? He's using America. They're all using America. Why would they, MBS is also using America. And so America was useful. America allowed him to get his money out. They didn't know what to do with all their money. I think that's really was the problem. I think that oil gave these countries all this money. and they just went and they're like, fuck, we're just going to buy the world. Like the fact that so much of the real estate, so much of just the things you see and interact with on a daily basis, that's not owned even domestically. It's owned by like the Saudis or the Emiratis, right? Like the UAE is the one who's putting up this $40 billion for the the Warner Bros. Discovery deal, right? The UAE, that you can trace the money through Abu Dhabi. Like I've done it. I've done it. I saw them. They liquidated the fund. They put it under a different alias. That alias paid Affinity Partners. Affinity Partners provides the cash to the Ellisons, and that's how they came up with the $100 billion plus counteroffer, because they went to Abu Dhabi and the United Arab Emirates liquidated like billions of dollars to go and help them buy, this media company. So the reason I'm telling you all these things is this meeting seems like it could have been the real like foundational discussions of how this relationship was going to work and how they were going to build the scaffolding. And Tom Barrack was super influential in Middle Eastern policy. He is the guy who helped network Kushner into the Middle East. It was Tom Barrack who made these connections for Jared Kushner. And it looks like Epstein was making the connections for Tom Barrack. That's what this meeting looks like. Hey, I met your Saudi friend. That sounds like, hey, meet my Saudi friend. And then I'm in Turkey, and then the Saudis, Barrack, and Churkin meet. What's Churkin's, part here? I think the UN has always been a concern for these guys. I think making sure that the UN is not functionally able to control or lobby against individual countries that are powerful was always very important to them. Finding a way to in the UN so that it could not do all over it. And like, what did Khashoggi, right? Khashoggi's written all over it. Khashoggi was writing about the corruption in Saudi Arabia. He was writing about what MBS was doing and how he was doing it. And so he was brutally tortured and dismembered, and MBS listened or potentially watched on camera, while they did it, because he was telling the truth, right? He was blowing the whistle. And this is like, that's why I keep coming back to this meeting, because there's just so many through lines. It's like, why this one meeting? Well, why? What was discussed? And the thing that I learned recently, actually, it was before, it was the Larry Summers email. That's the most recent thing for me. And it kind of changes the whole scope, right? Because now you've got a meeting of, that meeting would have been the Saudis, the former, Secretary of the U.S. Treasury, the former Prime Minister of Israel, the Russian ambassador to the UN, and Jeffrey Epstein in the same room in New York right before Trump takes power. What was the one thing that they really, Epstein's equation, right? Which I actually wrote it down because I thought when I read that article from Zev, I thought it was so significant. Because if you know someone's equation, you can solve it, right? You can apply his equation to things that are happening in the real world. I will say that the Epstein files, if we as a populace can prove with these files that these people are rapists and criminals and have built a system that's entirely corrupt and broken, at the very least, we can take away the validity of their wealth. We can take away the validity of their power, and we can at least put pressure on other countries not to treat with these guys, because it's like, okay, I want the people of France, and credit to France, even though the Rothschilds were like in France. So I don't know, France, you might want to check that out. But, like in that sense too, it's like the UK arrested Prince Andrew, right? Are they going to prosecute him? Well, if they don't, well, what's the people of the UK going to think, right? What are they? Because they don't like Trump. They don't like Trump. And so they're looking over across the pond. What happened to Epstein? Now Oh, and yeah, Kazakhstan as well, Uzbekistan. Those names are in there too. The one of the guys who's a big banker for the Caucasus. That's in the Caucasus, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan. Those countries kind of over there. They were involved. This was a meeting where they were talking about global financial power and global restructuring, I think, in the Middle East. And we can establish that by tracing Tom Barrack's movements and the type of deals that he was making at the time. So it's real. I think this meeting's really important. And it's like, because I remember when I went in, I was like looking at a bunch of different files. I just remember looking at this first meeting and you know, I always trust my gut because it hasn't failed me yet. So I was like, I think this is where we should look. And I still am concerned. I will say this to give you guys like a little bit of interesting current context though. Right now, I think whatever relationship previously existed in the Middle East between, you know, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, the United States, that relationship is falling apart rapidly because of how they're choosing to handle the situation around Iran. I think that is undeniable. You know, they just announced that instead of buying F-35s, that was previously discussed when MBS was here in October. Was it last October, I think? October, November?
Not too long ago, yeah.
Buying F-35s. And it was like this big thing, right? And then they just turned to Turkey and are investing in Turkey's 5th generation fighter program, not the United States. That's a divestment. That's a direct divestment. They made a lot of pledges and commitments to pledge hundreds of billions of dollars, right? Like Tokyo, right, made a commitment to put in like over $500 billion into the United States economy to get relief for tariffs, which we now know were unconstitutional. So just a fun side note, every deal he's made over the course of the year now is like, you can't really even consider that binding because it's not a legal tariff, right? Like, you know, so, but Japan's only put forward like, I want like 9 billion of that, right? Is only coming right now. The Saudis haven't given us that money. It's not like it's in Trump's pocket. It's not like it's right there. It's a IOU, right? The world of wealthy people is IOUs, lots and lots of money.
Yeah.
So, you know, yeah.
Before we continue further down this path, I want to shift your gears
Do it.
to another company that I just found in all of this while you were going into that good explanation there. I was looking into other companies involving some of our friends within this small circle. And you mentioned carbine technology.
Carbine. Yeah, correct.
Which in your report, which I think is a really interesting one that we should spend some time probably next week discussing. Might be a good episode about that because they are a technology company that develops advanced emergency communication technologies that was just bought out in November of 2025 by a company called Axon Enterprise that does
body cams, like Axon body cams.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Wow.
The emergency system, the Axon emergency, and that like it's all the emergency reporting in E911. And like what it does is it collects a lot of your metadata. And one of its early investors was former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak with approximately $1 million in the company in 2015 and assumed the role of chairman. He was also there was also partnership, and this says this in their Wikipedia page too. So this is like super easy to see. Jeffrey Epstein's name pops up right there. And Peter Thiel's venture firm, the Founders Fund, became an early backer in 2018. And so Peter Thiel is directly linked to this again, because he normally is.
You
at
start
this point.
talking to Peter Thiel shortly after this meeting too. Actually, you start to see Thiel's correspondence and all of that.
Yeah, because
It's very
Teal gets brought in before Vitaly Churkin is killed by
correct.
or is assassinated by Russia to clean house. And I think Steve Bannon was supposed to take over that role, is what my thought on that was Steve Bannon at that point was being groomed because he didn't enter the picture at least with a friendship in any way that we know of until 2017.
Right.
Um, for Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein. So I think Bannon was brought into and was being worked because he fit so well with it because he was a good part of it for them. Just
Mm-hmm.
like Jared Kushner has been groomed into the role that he has assumed, which is very similar to Jeffrey Epstein's in a lot of ways, because it's about money movement and finance movement and organizing people and getting these big ass deals done and making it so nobody remembers that it ever happened. But you pointed it out in some of the research you had been doing, but I want to point this one out too, specifically about this company, because we talk a lot about like US and Israeli backed security companies and safety companies that are both implemented and tested in Israel through either the extermination of the Palestinians in Gaza or through just Palantir, or this is another company that appears to be doing that. And it's and it's the modern 911 connection system, which makes it really insidious because it's partnered with groups like AT&T, and so it's built into your next gen 911 dialer and the ability for them to be able to pull like where your phone location is so that in case of an accident on your iPhone, let's say, and you stop suddenly and Apple has to report all that information, part of that may be part of those API set that they offer and that data collection, which Founders Fund means Peter Thiel still has his hands in it somewhere. He does not give up on the things that he spends money on, and he does not let them go.
Yeah.
So I think this is another one of those small but probably really significant pieces of info because this impacts all of us. This is used by a lot of companies. This is used in our 911 system in our and allows you to like stream on your camera if you provided access to do it, or listen in on your microphone if you give it access. That's what they say.
Mm-hmm.
But what they say and what is being done are two very distinct things. Like I look into nowadays because of things like this is what apps am I using and what data are they collecting? And if the founders or somebody associated with it are in the Epstein files. Like that's an easy thing you can do to self-validate your own like apps at home and stuff on your phone. And if you find apps that are owned by Epstein network folks, I would uninstall them like quick. Um, so this is why like these types of connections and finding this type of detail that Shane is pulling out that we're teasing out here and talking about is really important because who like no it's on Wikipedia but nobody gives a shit that
It's all public
Carbine.
domain. There, you
Yeah,
don't need, like, this is what I'm trying to tell people. You don't need an insider. It's public domain. Like you don't need a whistleblower to tell you what they're doing. It's all public domain because someone has always wanted to report on the wealthy and the powerful. They have people who follow them around, idolize them. They document everything they do because they've been manipulated to do so. They've been, they've made it and painted that these shady deals, they're painted by a media that is like successful and collaborative, right? Like they champion these things when people should be concerned. done so much work that to reframe all of those things. Like it's like undeniable, but it's public domain. I am actually confident that this is something to consider, right? I said this in the beginning. Why are we asking pedophiles to prosecute themselves? Why are we waiting for lawyers? I think you could put together a substantial case using the evidence that is considered real evidence by the FBI, right? Like this is real, validated, admissible evidence. Why don't citizens just start filing? Like, why don't people do it? Like, find someone who will file cases for you, flood the courts with like we can allege, we can say, I like the system. There has to be a way to at least use what little remains, because the reason they're beating us right now, they're losing to the world, but they're beating us. Okay. So like that, it's good that from a geopolitical perspective, they're not very successful right now, that things are going against them. In a domestic sense, there's still no accountability. And as long as there's no accountability, we're losing. Right. So like, you can say, oh, well, like this is good. Sure, it can be the right direction, but like, let's be very clear. If we are not able to establish accountability while the framework exists, then they will dismantle the framework entirely. So if the lawyers won't do it, if the law firms won't do it, just build the case ourselves. We have.
Well, and I think that's what we're doing.
I think you're right. Yeah.
In a lot of ways, is because things like what Ellie Leonard and Zev Shalev have put together are being handed to Congress and are being handed to New Mexico and places that actually need them so that they can prosecute and look into and form these truth commissions, because we cannot get to the part where we prosecute without the truth. And there's a ton of evidence out there. However, getting evidence that has never been collected before would be so powerful. Like if all of the work that this entire community has been able to do to like push forward and continue talking about these issues and discussing this can cause like Zorro Ranch to be dug up and they find bodies and find more evidence, that will change things in a way that I don't think they would be prepared for, because you can't stop that from coming out. They can't prevent that from coming out. They can prevent the files that they control from coming out, but they cannot suppress all of the new evidence that gets created. And I think the work that we're doing is providing the ability to create that evidence as needed. So like it's going to take 1 million or more of us to continue to do this work, just because we have to. The thing with the government is they can suppress it because they pay 1 million people to suppress it. We have to do it for free or do it for bootstrap budgets, like because we don't have a political party that's willing to back us in any way, because they're both owned and purchased by the same thing in a lot of ways. Like, and we have to move forward from it.
They're the same thing, guys. They're the same, right? Like, it's so important. If Chuck Schumer supports Israel, and we know that Trump works for the Kremlin, at the very least, like Witkoff and Kushner certainly do, you know, the situation, you can't say that a vote for Israel isn't a vote for Trump. It's a vote for Kushner. It's a vote against America. They, even if they're not voting for Trump, then they're voting at the direction of their AIPAC donors, which is probably in favor of, you know, Trump and this global order. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity. And there are things happening on a larger picture, particularly foreign investigations of the Epstein files. What could happen? Best case scenario. This is the dream. I don't know if this is going to happen. I will see. Best case scenario is the global, particularly at least Europe, dismantles Epstein's network in Europe, and takes away that arm, and that weakens them in the United States significantly. So like the evidence there in the Epstein files, like, the government, like they did when they redacted these files, right? Like, they didn't do it like super well. Like I guarantee you that the tech, the European intelligence people can take these documents, go into the freaking metadata or the script or whatever, and find out exactly what these things said. It's clearly actionable enough that they arrested Prince Andrew. France, came out almost right away and said that one of their junior ambassadors to the UN is in the files, and he's giving UN documents to Epstein. And so they're advising prosecution. It's one of the things we really, I think, is understated, is how much influence Epstein had on the United Nations. Like a lot. Right, like Terj, who was like the president of the Institute for Peace and one of the head guys at the United Nations, ambassadors. Right, he's every you read his emails. He's all the way down from Kuwait all the way back up through Norway and France, and he's on the UN. That's what these, and it's interesting. You have a lot of these Norwegian guys who are in on this, Polish, Swedish, Danish, it goes to show like there are bad people in every country. And what I hope, and one of the reasons I'm so committed to geopolitics, is to show people that you're not safe just because you live somewhere else. Like the systemic corruption, the systemic violence, the systemic greed, it's everywhere. And so we can hope that Europe prosecutes these people. And then you reach a point where, okay, so we just prosecuted all of your friends. They're in jail for child rape and, trying to destroy the world order. Can you really justify to your people of your country why you're treating and appeasing a country that's run by those people? Like the world has and is shifting away from the United States. And I think that the Epstein files, in their current form, this is the opportunity for the resistance, right? The middle powers, as called by Mark Carney, and it does exist. Ursula von der Leyen is one of the most under recognized and influential and important people in the world right now. She's the prime minister, a commissioner of the European Union. Under her direction, Europe has been able to diversify its trade away from the United States. It was able to put a stop to the United States trying to annex Greenland. It has been able to break past certain limiting restraints that was preventing concise and decisive action. Like they're leading the economic push to centralize, Europe's defensive infrastructure. The world doesn't pay attention to these women. They pay attention to Macron and Keir Starmer. But Macron is just in charge of France. She manages the whole bloc. She's incredible. Like there are people, there's women, smart women fighting these guys. And my hope is that, I say this a lot, but women have no incentive to bow to fascism. Fascism loves misogyny, and they are two peas in a pod, right? So, it's like when you're coming up in the midterms, right? And like when we're all voting, if we get to vote, but if we do vote for a woman. Even if you don't know, if you're unsure, because one of the things we are seeing is like in California, billionaires are flooding our elections down to the local level, down to the school board. Okay. So like vote for a woman, because a man can kind of just, especially a white man, but honestly any man, they can just go through fascism. Like me and Nick could probably, if we really didn't want to, we could just be white and keep our head down. Like we could. Like we don't believe in that. That's not who we are. But it's an option for a lot of these men. It's just not like Jasmine Crockett. She's a minority woman. She's fighting for every privilege that she has, and for the privileges that they've taken away from her and other women just in the last several years. There's no reason, no amount of money is going to get somebody in that sense to sacrifice their own, right to live safely and peacefully and have any kind of quality life at all. Vote for a woman. The Congress should be all men. The Congress is all men. We should see it like it should be minimum at this midterms, if we get to vote, 50% women. Minimum. If you want to save America, you vote for a fucking woman for every single seat. Men are not going to save America. Why? They're not motivated. Why would they? They're not motivated to fight fascism. They're motivated. Generally, it's much easier to go into the Nick Fuentes hole as a man and be like, oh yeah, I'm great. I'm a man. Like you fucking weak ass pathetic motherfuckers. But this is America, right? This is like what the Facebook psyop is all about. Women, it's not like that for them. And so, dude, like I guess like since we're a little at the end here, I just like women, like go and vote for a woman. I will never vote for like a man for governor, right? Like in California, I already like all the men, easy, discount half the ballot, probably more of it. And then go vote for a woman, because even if you're wrong, you're less likely to be wrong. Don't vote party lines, vote for the person who is a woman, who's human, and who hasn't taken money. But if you vote for a man, they can be bought by these people. It doesn't matter. Men are going to be extremely vulnerable. Even the chat, men are easily bought. They're easily bought. And, like it's something that me and Nick's Intelligent Masculinity series has been about. It's about identifying that men are weak as shit and immature as hell. And they just like to be catered to and made to feel special because of the way our gender roles in our society has been set up. Vote for a woman and you go around all of those things. It's about being decisive, right? I could sit here and try and validate all these men, but it's going to be much harder. Or I could just elect to not vote for a man, which statistically has made it more likely for us to be here, and try something different. What do we have to lose? Just everything. Do something different. Yeah, like, what do we have to? We have everything to lose. So try something new. Vote for a woman. Don't vote. And that's all I got. Vote for a woman. Vote for a woman, and do that.
Well, with that, Shane, promote yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So, guys, I do a lot of different things, primarily geopolitical analysis, problem solving, putting these things together. I'm committed to integrity in journalism and reporting, in giving you guys the full scope of the issue, whatever that may be. I believe that information is a right. I think you have a right to information. I think you have a right to transparency, and I think you have a right to responsible and diversified reporting, because we can't make educated decisions without all of the context, without those who, what, when, where, why. We can't make decisions. We've been deprived of that in America, in our global system. And that's what I'm trying to remedy with help of other people like Nick, and what we're doing here at Banner and Backbone. But I think at this point, it's integrity for me. Just integrity and factuality and honesty, and that's what I'll give you. I'm not going to tell you, like I said, I'm going to tell you what it is. Things look bad right now. Like the earth looks bad right now. Like we need, you deserve transparency. You deserve to be told the truth, and you deserve to be informed of what the consequences are going to be, and no amount of money can buy transparency or integrity. That's something we have to create in the space for ourselves. So support me at the Firebrand Project as I, as one of many, aspire to do that alongside people like Nick, who I couldn't recommend supporting more because of what Nick does. In many ways, Nick is even better at just really putting his head down and working and fighting. I mean, this guy is nonstop. I don't even know if you sleep, bro. Like, you're a dad,
I
you're a
do. I
husband,
do
you're
sometimes.
you're a entrepreneur, you are a soldier. Even if you are not currently in our military, you have never stopped fighting for the United States. Um, and that's just not something. Integrity is not it's not a dime a dozen. So when you have the opportunity to work with someone like Nick or support someone like Nick, do that. Paid subscriptions, like, we're bootstrapping it, right? Like, that's just how it is. So paid subscriptions help us both, and both are reasonable. Like, I think both of are very reasonable. So I hope you guys, if you're in a position to support both of us, or one of us,
Yeah,
do.
and come support me at Sick of This Shit Publications with, like Shane had mentioned, was the intelligent masculinity discussions, chronic illness discussions on my chronically illing out. Sorry for those who are in the community who missed there was no show this morning. We had some tech issues. I was also out for a doctor's appointment, so I was unable to help with any of the issues during the morning. So we'll be back next week with our normal show. But we're going to be we're continuing the hard work. I've got some really great interviews coming up next month as well. And I'm getting some other names that we know and love on there, and some that folks will be really excited to see. So look out for those scheduling announcements and things like that on Sick of This Shit Publication side. I also have a new shop there, so if you want,
Yeah, I
I
got
link
the
it in.
merch.
Yeah, I link it in my shows. I'm drinking from my notes of the week. Now you know, so you can grow a
That's
coffee
very nice.
mug
That's very nice.
um, with mine and Walter's faces on it. I don't have my hoodie on like I normally would, but come support me there. That's where I'm building a main platform to be able to house a lot of people and build a chronic illness and intelligently masculine community that doesn't suck, like a manosphere that doesn't suck. And then come support us here at Banner and Backbone. This is the vehicle for our tooling, for our setups, for our ability to cross platform and cross share. I'm meeting with friends in the community to help see what types of new research tools and other features that we can build into our ecosystem to make it easier for us, make it more reliable for us, make us more reliable for y'all, make everybody feel more trusted in the work that we're doing, that it's back, that it's on, that it's well researched and well vetted. So come help support Banner and Backbone so we can get all these tools and systems out. And I know I've been kind of quiet today, but that's okay.
I
Shane had a
apologize
lot of
too.
no man. Shane had a lot of really good info.
Trying to.
And yeah, we've actually had Lev on here with us, and we're going to be working to get folks like Zev Shalev back on for some more shows. We're going to work to get Wajahat Ali on to discuss things. I'm working to talk with him to see if we can get him on for an episode. I know he knows a lot about the accelerationist side as well as plenty of reporting on the crypto aspects, and we touch all of it. So continue to throw out names and name ideas that you want to see with us and as guests on our show, or folks that you know that are putting out really good content around this type of information and would like to see them get a little bit of discussion time. Let us know. We have a feedback form. It'll be linked in the show notes. And we will see y'all next week. No special episode this week unless we get something planned randomly, but right now, no special episode in the middle of the week. And we'll see. we'll see y'all next week. We'll see y'all on Monday next week, 1 p.m. Eastern, like we always do. 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, for Palantalk, where we like to talk tech.
No fascism.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good one.